Truthfully, I'm worried about our friend Tom Luginbill. Maybe he's packing right now, but he's not in New Orleans yet. And is that what you were doing? You were packing Luginbill over there? We're about to talk to Luginbill about college football, the big stories, and getting ready. He's on the call with Alabama this weekend, right, against Kansas State at the Sugar Bowl. So he's heading to New Orleans, but he's not in New Orleans. And if you've been following air travel in America over the last few days, he should have left last week.
And in appreciation for Tom Luginbill joining us, we're awarding him 2 million Southwest Air Miles. Welcome in, Luginbill. How are you?
Well, fortunately, I live in Charlotte, so I'm pretty much relegated to one airline, and that's American. So far, so good for my travels later this afternoon. Yeah, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, holy smokes, I got to jump on with the guys, and I'm packing my stuff because I got to go from the Sugar Bowl to the Under Armour game. So it's one of them. It's like 2 suits, 2 shirts, 2 ties. It's like double of everything. So I'm scrambling a little bit here.
As you have looked at Alabama, first of all, with the guys that have opted to play, this has been a concern for Alabama in these games where they don't make the college football playoff and they are in a quote-unquote lesser bowl game. It's lesser when you play to Alabama standards. There's no doubt about that. When you've got big names like Will Anderson and Jahmyr Gibbs and Bryce Young saying we're playing in this game, that has to filter down to the rest of the locker room, does it not?
I would sure hope so because, unfortunately, right, wrong, or indifferent, because of the college football playoff, we've diminished the other bowls and the validity and how you cherish the privilege of playing in a game like the Sugar Bowl. And I think it reflects maturity. I think it reflects leadership. It sends a message that this game is important, and what you put on film, regardless of whether you're going to be a 7th-round pick or first-round pick, is important. It's important to play for your teammates, to play for the team, but more importantly, cherish the opportunity and the privilege of playing in the Sugar Bowl. And you're right, we've seen it. We've seen the disappointment of Alabama not show up and play well versus Oklahoma, then not show up and play well versus Utah. This has been something that has plagued this roster, but I will say this. Having these guys opt in, it's not even an opt-in. Having these guys do what they're supposed to do, as in play the game of football that they're on scholarship to play, is refreshing. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they come out. I'm looking forward to seeing how Kansas State comes out because it's a team that you just can't disregard, man. They're so fundamentally sound. And keep an eye on the kicking game in the Sugar Bowl, guys, because Kansas State is exceptional on special teams. They don't beat themselves. They're not heavily penalized. They've got a running back that's 5'0" that gets lost behind the line of scrimmage. This is going to be a lot of fun to see how this thing unfolds.
And to me, that's where the game is won or lost for Kansas State is that ability up front where I think Alabama's front 7 is so good, especially the linebackers, and Kansas State's ability to establish some kind of run game. If they can do that, they're in the game. If they can't get a run game going, this could lean heavily to Alabama. How close am I on the breakdown?
You're very close, and you're forgetting one X factor that I think is a big component to this. Keep in mind that Adrian Martinez should be 100% healthy to go for a quarterback run package. And if you're an Alabama fan, and we've seen versus a traditional quarterback and a non-traditional quarterback, you have to defend those 2 offenses entirely different. And so Will Howard's obviously going to get the start. He's earned the ability to start, but he's not a huge threat with his legs. Alabama can play 11 on 10. But if Adrian Martinez comes into the game, now it changes because now you have running back run threat, quarterback run threat. You have option principles and RPO game that you've got to contend with. So you can bet that Alabama has spent a lot of time, even though they haven't seen it on tape a bunch up until this point because Will Howard's been the guy. Expect some quarterback run out of Kansas State.
I'm interested, though, in 2 things. One, how much does that look like what Auburn was trying to do in their game with Alabama without the Robbie Ashford's history of throwing the football? And 2, when they do throw the football, what's Kansas State's receivers like against Alabama's secondary? Break that down for me a little bit.
Yeah, I labeled Kansas State's receivers. I was having a conversation with part of our crew earlier in the week. I said they're serviceable. And what I mean by that is they're functional, they're reliable, they are good players. Malik Knowles is obviously the go-to guy, number 4. Cade Warner, Kurt Warner's son, is the reliable 3rd and 8. He's going to get to 9 and he's going to catch it in traffic. But they don't break the huddle with guys that you immediately on defense go, okay, where is so-and-so lined up? And I think that's something that because of Alabama, how they like to play, I don't think that they're going to give Kansas State much room off the football. I think they're going to challenge Kansas State to see if on the perimeter they could win one-on-one matchups. This will be the best secondary by a mile and I think it's a really improved secondary, to be honest with you guys, not to backtrack, but they kind of morphed themselves into what I've seen over the last, 4 to 5 weeks of kind of growing together as a much more functional unit on the defensive back end. So there will be challenges for Kansas State getting off the ball. If they get pressed, can they get over the top? I'm not sure they can. I think that Alabama is going to force them to try it.
ESPN's Tom Luginbill is with us each week, courtesy of AAATix, AAATix.com, 822-7382. Dunaway mentioned the Bama-Mississippi State game tonight, a sellout, Auburn-Florida sellout. You get those tickets at AATix, AAATix.com, 822-7382, Sugar Bowl tickets as well. There's growing speculation that Bill O'Brien will be in New England next year, not in Tuscaloosa. Assuming that happens, Alabama had great success with Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian. Is there a guy like that out there for Nick Saban that runs? I don't even know how to describe that type of offense, Luke's, but runs an offense that can wake up Alabama's offense a little bit.
Garrett Riley.
I mean, that's the hot name. That's the hot name. That's who everybody wants to try, right?
Well, essentially what Garrett's done, it's a little mixture of, old school air raid, but it's got a power run game component. Their favorite play is guard tackle counter, and they love it. And that is not, I think you look at, the late great Mike Leach, who used to joke with all of his disciples about how everybody that started running the football got kicked off the air raid bus, right?
Yeah.
And Lincoln was one of those guys. Dana Holgerson was one of those guys that really felt like, okay, having a more dynamic quarterback and having a power run game only helps aid in all of the passing game concepts that we already have. And they evolved. And I think that there's this notion that in the air raid, you're not going to be able to run the football effectively, and you don't want to. That's not the case with Garrett Riley. It's not the case with a Lincoln Riley or Dana Holgerson and some of these other guys. So I think it's something worth looking into. I think a lot of it just depends on ensuring that you're quarterback friendly. The RPO game has to be a big component to what you do. Having an athletic quarterback's got to be a big component to what you do. It just puts so much strain on the defense. I remember getting ready to do the Citrus Bowl with Alabama and Michigan several years back, and Coach Saban saying, I got sick and tired of chasing these guys all around the field, and I started looking at our staff, go, why don't we go get one of these guys? And that's kind of what's happened, right? And now all of a sudden you're more athletic and you can do more within the offense, but you're never going to deviate from a strong run game. It's going to be founded in that area, and but I do think there are some really, really smart young coaches. The guy that, to be honest with you, not to go off topic here, the guy that Deion Sanders hired at Colorado from Kent State, really, really good. That was a really, really good hire. I think he was an up-and-comer. So there won't be any shortage, guys, of quality coaches wanting to coach at the University of Alabama if that opens up.
Kansas State's the Big 12 champions. TCU's in the playoffs in the game that follows you on Saturday. And I'm interested in that matchup with TCU in Michigan. What can TCU do to slow down Michigan's run game? And does J.J. McCarthy, is he the difference in why this Michigan team could possibly win a national championship, his ability to throw where they didn't have that last year when they ran into Georgia?
Yeah, so let me start off with the TCU side of it. Number one, TCU's got a lot better players than people think they do, particularly on defense, particularly at corner. Their corners are really, really good. They will match up very, very well with Michigan's personnel out wide. But the way they line up, they're in that 3-3-5 look, and they just dare you to run the football. And what they want to do is they want to spill the ball to the perimeter. They are not a team in a 3-3-5 look that's going to be able to just line up, hold up in a phone booth versus a downhill power run game. And that's what Michigan's going to try to do to them. So what TCU wants to do, their best tacklers are their perimeter players. They want to clog the middle and force that ball to bounce outside, get into space, and then run to the football, leverage the ball, and tackle. Both of these two teams, Michigan's the best tackling team on defense in college football. I think TCU is right up there with them.
Wow.
All right, that's a hard thing to do in today's game. So for my money, TCU's got to get off the field a couple of times. They can't allow the inside run game to keep the defense on the field because you're going to limit offensive possessions. TCU would love for this thing to get into a track meet because that's not Michigan's game. So to me, there's two things on defense for TCU that I'd sum up. Can they hold up for 4 quarters? All right. Do they have the depth to be able to stand up at the line of scrimmage and say, nope, you're not going to run it down our throat? And then secondly, can you get a takeaway? Can you get off that field on that 1 3rd and 4 where you hold them? They decide not to go for it on 4th down because they're on the 38-yard line. Those two things are key. On the Michigan side of things, I don't think they have to ask J.J. McCarthy to wear a cape. I think that he's going to hand it off. He's going to be they're going to be a play action football team in the passing game. They got the best group of offensive line and I think run game scheme of anybody in college football right now. They've done such an unreal job up front at Michigan. They just can't take TCU lightly. TCU loves to live in the one possession game. They love to live when it looks like all hope is lost. They thrive on that. So the longer Michigan allows TCU to stick around, the tougher it's going to be on Michigan to win the game.
ESPN's Tom Luginbill, presented by AAATix, AAATix.com, 822-7382. You'll see him on the Sugar Bowl coming up Saturday with Alabama and Kansas State. Our buddy Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, gave it a tremendous stat that I was completely unaware of today, that Stetson Bennett has not been sacked since the middle of October. That's pretty remarkable to think about, Luke. You go against some pretty good defenders in the Southeastern Conference. For him to avoid that since October, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I think it's a reflection on a few things. The ability to run the ball, the ability to get the ball out of your hand on play action, and the fact that, guys, let's call it what it is. Stetson Bennett is a much better athlete than people give him credit for. Much better. Same as Max Duggan at TCU. Just that crafty guy that finds a way to make that first guy miss and avoid a negative play for 7 yards on a sack. And even if you throw it out of bounds, all right, you haven't lost anything. So, I always hear everybody talk about sacks. Okay, sacks are important, but affecting the quarterback can be every bit as important. And if you affect the quarterback, whether that's through pressure, coming at his legs, buzzing the tower, whatever it may be, that is where I think Ohio State has to have an impact defensively to get Georgia out of rhythm or get Georgia off schedule, because that's where Stetson Bennett's really good. He can throw it from within the pocket with anticipation, timing, but if things aren't perfect, he can evade and avoid the loss.
Sam Hartman likely is going to end up at Notre Dame, but what an unbelievable career at Wake Forest. True or false, because the report said several SEC teams were reaching out to Sam Hartman, he could start at all 14 SEC schools next year.
Oh, that's true. I've seen him a bunch of times the last couple of years now. He is really, really good, like really good. And if there's a place for Chase Daniel in the NFL, if there's a place for Colt McCoy, then there's a place for this guy. Tough as nails, really smooth passer. Nothing affects him in the pocket. When you guys watch that slow mesh Wake Forest offense, which is fascinating, he's throwing the football like 2 yards from the line of scrimmage with bodies flying all around him. And his eyes never come down. He's always keeping his eyes downfield. It's unbelievable to see that type of savvy and focus. So I think anytime you have a guy that's thrown for that many yards, that many touchdowns, been that productive, of course you're going to take him. And I think it's smart on his part because he needs to go into another offense to prove that it wasn't this scheme only, that he can do it in another set of circumstances. And I think he's really smart in doing that.
Will that slow mesh spread in college football? Is that a Dave Clawson only thing, or do you think you'll see other teams run it because it gets a whole lot of criticism? People don't like watching it.
You're starting to see the Chiefs do it a little bit in the NFL.
Dude, it puts you in such a conflict of assignment. You think the zone reads a problem or an RPO is a problem? This thing's a huge problem because at what point do you tell your players, okay, you have to commit to the run? I mean, they are literally dragging that thing from 5 yards deep to 1 yard to the line of scrimmage. What are you going to tell the guy to do? And Dave Clawson told me we prepared for the Florida State game this year. I said, how was this thing born? He goes, well, number one, we couldn't block a chair when we got here. All right. Then we started realizing that athletically we could RPO people, but they could change things up on us and give us a foggy picture. He goes, when we started to go to this, it forced teams to commit to one or the other. So all it did was clear the read up for the quarterback. I think the concern that other coaches have, because it is fascinating when you watch it, it is remarkably productive. The other concern is it looks like it's really difficult to protect. You know, how close do you want your quarterback to the line of scrimmage with bodies around him? And could they all do what Sam Hartman has done? I don't know. But I know it's remarkably difficult to defend, and nobody likes preparing for it.
And I don't like watching it. I'm going to tell you, it's not entertaining to me to watch. It's hard. It's a hard watch for me.
It's disconcerting, isn't it? Like you're kind of going, oh, wait a minute, you know. And it's just I'm with you a little bit there, Jen. It's different. It is hard to watch sometimes. But if you want to get a scheme advantage, and maybe you don't have the athletes that everybody else does, that's why Wake and Dave Clawson have done what they've done.
Now, I'm sure there was some guy in 1919 that was like, them throwing the football down the field. I like it when we lined it up and played like rugby, just throwing it around.
Remember, there's 3 things that can happen when you throw the football, and 2 of them are bad.
Yeah, that's right. All right, he's ESPN's Tom Luginbill. You will see him Saturday on Bama and K-State right there on ESPN for the Sugar Bowl. Luginbill, as always, thank you for the time. Safe travels. We'll see you next week.
You bet, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, buddy. Take care. Luginbill with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. He joins us each week, courtesy of AAATix. AAATix.com is the website to go to, or call him in Birmingham, 822-7382. Bama basketball on the road, Auburn at home, Sugar Bowl, all those ticket needs right there at AATix, 822-7382.